a virtual, we're always looking to find new friends and expand our network. So if you're not a member today, please take your phone and scan this barcode and learn how. If you have any questions about the membership and the benefits, there's some board members in the room. I see you. So please raise your hand, or you can reach out to some of the board members. We have Caroline and Glenna and Kirpa that I've seen so far on the call. And you can ask them, hey, what's it like to be a member? And what are those values and benefits that maybe I can get from being a member of WCS? Next slide. So it's always a little interesting to talk about yourself, but I'll do my best. My name's Sarah Fuentes, and I'm the co-founder and president of Smart Waste. Our core values are transparency, circularity, and people. And as I mentioned, I'm the vice chair of Women in Cleantech and Sustainability, and this is what I call my labor of love. I do this for fun. So I volunteer for fun, and I network for fun, and I get to meet you fine people today. And it's just a pleasure to be here and to have this opportunity to discuss this topic, which is really dear to my heart. And today, as I mentioned, we have some fabulous panelists on the call today. Next slide. And I have the privilege of introducing to them, and I'm just going to recap a little bit about them, and then I'm going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves. So first, we have Ala Hussein from Li-Cycle. Li-Cycle is one of our corporate members, so thank you for being here, and thank you for being a corporate sponsor. And then we have Janet Freeman from FabTech Solar Solutions, and Jonathan Casting from Corporate E-Waste Solutions, who is also a corporate sponsor. Their company has supported our scholarship program in supporting our scholarship members with laptops. So I'm going to start off our conversation with a story. And in 2016, I was working on a site. It was we were contracted to do the waste management plan for Swinnerton Renewable Energy, and we were on a project, and they were building a 300 plus solar or megawatt field in Pensacola, Florida. And during this job, I get a call from the superintendent. The superintendent said, Sarah, we have a problem. I'm hoping you can help us. And I said, well, what's the problem? He said, well, one of our guys, while they're offloading the skids, broke over 1,000 of the panels. And we don't, mind you, this is the contractor that's installing the client's portfolio, right? So those of us that are in the industry know that the contractor is usually not the one that owns the solar. And I'm like, wow, he's like, yeah, and we really want to make sure that we do the right thing. Well, in Pensacola, Florida, there was no regulation around putting solar panels in the landfill. And so I said, well, not on my watch. We're not going to put these panels in the garbage. There's no way that that's going to happen. And we need to come up with a better solution on how to handle this. And so I did extensive research over the next 48 hours. And we contacted the manufacturer, and we had to have a dialogue going back and forth with the manufacturer to take them back because they were damaged goods. At the end of the day, the manufacturer agreed to take them back, but we had to pay for shipping to take them back, because under no circumstance was I going to allow over 1,000 solar panels to go into the landfill. But then I was posed with this problem that, why is it so hard? And what's this? How is this going to affect us in the future? And so the wave is coming. With solar panels, batteries, and other electronics having a lifespan of 20 to 30 years, many of them are starting to reach the end of life. It's projected that by 2050, around 80 million metric tons of solar, batteries, and electronic materials will reach their end of life. And this is already starting to happen right now. This is a huge amount of waste, and it's a challenge because they're not easy to recycle. This is an issue that affects everybody in the renewable industry, whether directly or indirectly. It also affects every consumer, whether directly or indirectly. Today, our goal is we are going to grow awareness with the hope of mobilizing and maybe a little social pressure to overcome the challenges we currently face. So thank you for joining us. So I would like to start with Ala, if you can please unmute yourself and tell us about yourself and what you do at Lifecycle.
For sure, Sarah. Thank you for that. That was a great introduction, and the story was very meaningful because I'm right there with you when it comes to the upcoming waste crisis that we have across the board. So as Sarah mentioned, Ala Hussein here. I'm from Lifecycle. I'm in the engineering group there. I'm the engineering and construction manager. And at this stage, what one of my primary responsibilities are, I have my hands in multiple things, but the main thing that I'm trying to achieve for the company right now is regulatory and permitting compliance for all of the facilities that we're currently building in the Rochester area. So that's the hub facility right now. And we'll dive into that a little bit further later on. But that's my primary purpose there. And I'm helping with compliance of facilities that are currently operational as well. So that's me in a nutshell. Lifecycle is a company that is helping manage the waste crisis that's upcoming for our end-of-life lithium-ion batteries. So that's kind of the vision of the company itself. You're muted, Sarah. Sorry.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Janet?
First of all, thank you so much, Sarah, for inviting me. It is a pleasure, and I am all about building awareness to save them landfills from the millions of solar panels that are heading their way. And I loved your story, Sarah. Thank you for being on the ground, because that's where a lot of those decisions are made, on the ground, where it's just easier and less expensive to go put those solar panels in the landfill. So building awareness is very important. So I'm Jeanette Freeman, and I'm with FabTech Solar Solutions. And FabTech is a powerful provider of disposal solutions for specifically solar panels. And we do it through refurbishing and any panel that can be reused, being able to get that reused and back in the marketplace, providing affordable solar, as well as recycling and setting up a recycling network throughout the country and finding those solutions, whatever it is and whatever needs to happen in this growing industry. Just a little bit of background, FabTech is a family company and has been in business over 21 years, but was in the salvaging of electronics for many years, and only in the last about 7 years, but basically in the last 4 to 5 years, everything has shifted to be able to, all we do is solar panels, and our emphasis is on solar panels. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Jonathan?
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm definitely honored as well to be here today with everybody, and I want to thank Smart Waste for everything that you do. That's the start. My name is Jonathan Castang. I've been in the environmental field for over a decade. I have a bachelor's in biology. I started with Caltrans at a very young age with soil sampling, dealing with Shell, gas, Chevron, dealing with removal of old tanks and soil sampling, where my passion just kind of grew from there. My passion is in not only recycling, but keeping Mother Earth clean. I'm very, very environmental passion regarding that. The heart believes is basically in society where recycling needs to be done more. Our shores, our water, our air, our land to be cleaner. Focus in reality is that we all can work together. We'll discuss more about my passion later on, but I definitely am blessed to be here with everybody and everybody working together to accomplish one thing.
You can already feel the passion from these panelists, so let's get into it. My first question, why recycle versus landfill? Why would we want to recycle electronics? Why would we want to recycle lithium ion? And why would we want to recycle solar panels? So let's start with you, Ala.
Loaded question to start, Sarah. I would say lithium-ion batteries, and I think this is where we have a very wrong perception of what these batteries are. These batteries contain a lot of valuable materials, a lot of critical metals that we currently mine, and being able to recycle batteries that are no longer in use allows us to extract a lot of these critical metals And as a result, we're offsetting carbon footprint. We're reducing our need for mining options for this. And the reality is that metals are non-renewable sources, but they're so essential. They're natural resources, they're non-renewable. And this is an avenue that is evolving, but even with life cycles innovative technologies, we're able to basically extract those critical materials and reintroduce them as saleable products for batteries again. In terms of diverting them to landfills, there's that component of it. You don't want metals going in there. These are metals that we can use for our industries on an ongoing level. And the other thing too with lithium-ion batteries is that there's hazards associated with them as well when they're in their proper form. They can be flammable and dangerous. So, there's a lot of key components there, but the reality is batteries are made of good stuff that we want to reuse and keep reusing. So that's what we're trying to do here.
I love that. You're absolutely right. I'll never forget the day that I got a phone call saying that one of the trucks is on fire because the lithium-ion battery exploded in there. So that's a real situation. So, Janet, why recycle versus landfill solar panels?
Well, the reclaiming of materials that Alla suggested is very important. We don't hear about that enough. But if you think of the size alone of solar panels, then that's a lot of aluminum for one thing, which is usually, pretty prevalent, but it's going to require a lot more, so we waste it. The other thing is the obvious leaching of the chemicals and the toxics that are in the cell, small quantities of lead and different of cadmium and different ingredients that would seep into the water supply. And then, but I just like the image. Imagine, I think it's like that number of solar panels that are going to go to waste equals like 16 Empire State Buildings in New York. Now, can you just imagine. I know of 30,000 panels that are being put in a landfill right now. Now imagine 30,000 panels, and imagine those having to go in the landfill and then be broken down over a long time. I mean, it doesn't take a brain scientist to figure that out. That just sounds like not a good idea.
Yes, you're absolutely right on that. Jonathan?
Well, it's kind of crazy when we look at not only just California as one of different than the rest of the nation. I didn't realize solar panels started back in 1976 in California. It was kind of crazy when I started understanding solar panels as they're growing now, and the way California is putting that into any new homes built. They passed an energy law basically that went into effect. It started in 2018 and then went into effect in 2020. That any new homes being in California need to have this solar mandate. And we look at it as, okay, the life cycle of these are, they say 20 years, it could be less. They have to replace them if they go out, if they're not producing its 100% performance. Where are those going?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the question. Our state is pushing these builders and homeowners to get solar, but we don't have an end of life solution. And not only we're all facing that, but it's going to get worse. I pulled some statistics up that currently 140,000 solar panels are being installed today. That's each day.
Yeah.
At that further estimate, they're looking at 26,000 tons of panels will end up in the waste this year. That's growing, and it's going to continue to grow.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Jonathan, with that. With the problem growing, we want to think about, hey, who's fiscally responsible now, right? Like, as a consumer or as the manufacturer. And that leads me into the thought, like, what is the economic viability of recycling these materials that we're talking about today? And if one of you is eager to start, you can share. Otherwise, I can call on one of you. Does that, okay.
Well, first of all, one of the things that makes it work now is the reality that solar panels do last a long time. And most of the time, they have a lot of life in them when they're taken off a site or taken off an array. They have a lot of life. And that's the piece that Fabtech plays is because we have been doing refurbishing for a long time. We pay companies for viable solar panels. So that can offset the cost of the recycling. We're looking to offset those costs because everything is run by the economics of it. So if I can go in and pay for half of those panels because we can refurbish them, then that makes the pain of the recycling that much easier, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the ways that makes the economics work. The other thing that will make the economics of recycling work, well, there are a lot of things, but the more that we do it, the more we grow awareness, the more people that are committed to recycling, the costs go down. There's more competition, there's more people doing it. It drives that industry of recycling solar panels, which is still small. So there are ways, and it will continue to shift and evolve.
So just to kind of reiterate something that you said, that when the end of life of a solar panel, it's not necessarily that it's not able to work, it's just not as efficient, correct? And that's the kind of thought process around what you just mentioned?
Well, not all the time. Many times they are just as efficient. And it goes back to, why is that solar panel not being used, right? Because we work a lot with brand new construction.
Yeah.
Brand new construction is where we're actually seeing a lot of the work, because just like you mentioned on that project, there is a percentage of breakage in every new construction.
Yeah.
But the breakage might not be full on broken glass. It might be bent frames, and it might be wires pulled out. It might be other things that can have value. So many of the times it does have value. And the other thing is many good panels are taken off because they're not as powerful, even so maybe they're a 250 and they can get a 450 watt, right? So they'll take those off and put on a higher wattage, so it's more profitable. So those panels still very likely could have another 20 years.
Yeah. So Ala, what's your thought around the economic viability of recycling lithium-ion batteries?
I think it's definitely viable. Just speaking at a high level, I think the demand growth for lithium-ion batteries is exponential at this stage. I think it is. The electrification for a lot of the industries kind of creeped up out of nowhere. And as a result, I would say even in the next decade or so, it will become a waste crisis, essentially. I mean, just going off of numbers right now, in 2021, we are looking at about 6 figures when it comes to tonnage that's available for recycling lithium-ion batteries. That's going to go to over 3 million by 2030.
Wow.
The opportunity is definitely there for, again, extracting those materials. But even just going back to what I was mentioning is that a lot of these materials that are used for these batteries, they're non-renewable. There's limited capacities. It's a natural resource. It's going to come to a point where, there's going to be depletion. There's already scenarios where we're seeing some of that. We're seeing scenarios of, unethical standards and practices in order to mine some of these metals. So, I mean, going back to that economical question, whether it is an economical option right now, I wouldn't be able to comment on that, but I would say definitely in the future, it is going to be even more prominent and a more financially viable solution than it may be at this stage. So there's definitely lots of factors at play, and the products that Li-Cycle is producing at the end of the day, they're battery grade products. So we're even taking some steps away from battery manufacturers and providing these products. Going from the life cycle of mining processes, they still have to take a few steps before they get that battery grade material and they can go on to manufacture. We're giving them those products and we're saying, here is your battery grade material and you can go ahead and use them as you need, right? So we're tapering off a lot of different financial implications as part of our processes at the company. So I hope that answers it. I know that was a whole spiel, but yeah.
I think you in a nutshell, it sounds like we're moving away from the linear way of thinking to the circular way of thinking. And that's, I think, what a lot of the people on the call are interested in. Jonathan, can you kind of elaborate the economic viability of recycling for electronic materials?
Absolutely. Electronics. We all know when those toaster ovens and coffee pots go out, what do we do with it? It's not educated to the public on what to do. I mean, can we throw it in the trash? We're not supposed to, but they end up there. I work with a lot of landfills. We are getting solar. We are getting, in the past, there used to be, you push the button across the street, there was a little solar panel that would light up these orange lights. Those are now being removed. I mean, everybody remember those, the crosswalk lights? I mean,
Yeah.
they're still around, right? But those are becoming old technology where these cities are replacing them, and they need to know where to throw it. So the support, well, obviously, that I'm doing with the landfills now in the cities, we are an R2 downstream. We are end of life security, not only just solar panels, but electronic waste, diverting that from the landfill.
So talk to me about like the cost, like what fiscally does it make sense for someone or a company to say, hey, let me call Jonathan and, recycle responsibly with you? How is that economically viable for you and then for them?
Well, there's recovery that some of these companies don't understand that they have. Not only just junk, we're talking about security too. We're looking at printers and faxes that are in these corporations or in these buildings that businesses have. Everybody has a copier. When they go out, those are turning into now security data holding devices. Those need to be handled correctly and shredded. It's not only just what's on a PC or a hard drive that everybody is aware of when your phone crashes. I mean, that's the same exact security that we are providing. End of life recycling the correct way. We're not sending anything overseas. It's going actually into a shredder and it is being destroyed. That is security. I can't express that enough on different levels of whether it's just a hard drive or a computer. I mean, we're dealing with sensitive security measures that we are taking not lightly. That should be a secure end of life.
You do bring up a very valid point about security, and we think about security a lot around information and data, but I also think about security as having a clean water system, clean air, clean food that we can eat, right? So let me jump into this a little bit about, here in California, we kind of mentioned there's a little bit different regulation around universal waste. And universal waste is a subsect of hazardous materials. So for those of us on the call that don't know what universal waste is, it is a subsect of hazardous material, but it's considered not hazardous if you touch it and have a certain volume of it. And so it's regulated. And the EPA made it, something that it is regulated here in the United States. Well, in California, we have a little bit stricter policies than other states around universal waste. And now solar panels are considered universal waste here in California, but not in every other state across the United States domestically. Internationally, there's been strict regulations in the European base around how to handle these materials as well. What have we seen, if anything, change around this particular policy around now it being considered universal waste, solar panels being universal waste? Have we noticed, is it something that companies are now abiding by, or are they just saying, oh, I'm just going to ignore it and try to get away with what I can? Anybody notice any difference since this law has come into place with solar panels being universal waste?
I'd say a quick jump back into landfills. These companies are just saying, okay, we're sending it to the landfill. That's at least on my point, team, that I'm getting more and more of these landfills saying, hey, we have more solar. We have more solar. Can we send it your way? Of course we can. I mean, when we reverse a little bit about hazardous removal, we're talking about toners and ink cartridges that are in these printers. If you remove that ink cartridge from the device, it turns into a hazardous material. If you leave it in the printer, it can be shipped, obviously, as a non-hazardous material. I mean, I can't express that enough, that these landfills are the ones that these companies are just going towards. And that, I think it's us and pushing towards recycling, yes, but the proper way of handling it. I think that's it on my end.
Janet, have you noticed anything, transportation maybe costs or anything like this?
Well, first of all, from my understanding, it got a downgrade from hazardous waste to universal waste, which made it easier, actually. And that's why they're putting it in the landfill instead of recycling. But there are some rules, and they mostly have to do with the way we transport those solar panels. And how long the company can store them. So now they can store them a longer period of time on a property, up to a year, where they weren't supposed to do it before, okay? And that helps you to be able to move panels to one location, store, so you can get enough then to ship. And then the shipping requirements are basically that they have to be wrapped in shrink wrap so that no pieces of glass fall out into the truck, and that they have to be labeled as universal waste, and the manifest has to be labeled as that as well, and they keep a record of that. So it's mainly on transporting those solar panels that falls into place.
Ala, can you share with us a little bit about how you receive your materials? And is there similar, like that there's regulations around how you receive your batteries?
There are a lot of regulations around our batteries, and I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is in the inconsistency of regulations. So we have certain regulations on the Canadian side, we have certain ones on the US side. One of our facilities does classify, or the material that comes in, we fall into that universal waste category too. And as Jeanette mentioned, it helps a lot with the logistics and kind of the paperwork associated with that. Even on an international level, we're really trying, and I know this is stemming a little bit just on regulations generally, but it's a huge challenge for us because of just the different classifications and interpretation of what comes out of a battery. What is a battery? What are the interim products that stem from it? Is it a waste? Is it a hazardous waste? Is it a commodity? Those are a lot of the challenges that we face. So from a regulation standpoint, our questions or our inconsistencies across the board globally start right from trying to get batteries. Who's going to get it to us? What do we need to do to be able to have it? What's the associated protocols, processes, and ensuring that, we're compliant across the board. So it's definitely very complicated for the lithium-ion battery industry right now, I think because it's so new, but at the same time, it's something that we're trying to tackle day in, day out.
So for those of us that are on the call, I want to share with you just this thought that those of us that are in the waste and recycling industry, when someone says, oh, I got tons of this, I got tons of that, we literally think tons. Like, we're not thinking a garbage bag. We literally think in 2,000 pounds when someone says that to us. And I'm sure those of us on the call have gotten some calls, oh, I got tons of solar panels, and it's like 2. I got tons of solar batteries, it's like 5. I got tons of e-waste, and it's 4 laptops. We in the industry think in tons because volume is the name of the game. The more, the easier it is for us to handle. It sounds a little bit interesting, but just so those of us that are on the call, we, all 4 of us in this call right in the panel right now, we all think when tons, we literally think 2,000 pounds. Like, oh, we get kind of excited. Like, well, do you got more tons than that?
Yeah, give us as much as you have.
Yeah, we'll take it all. So I want to dive into the technology. Women in clean tech and sustainability. We love talking about new tech, clean technologies. I'll share with us a little bit about Li-Cycle's technology and how it works.
Oh gosh, I love this stuff. All right, so Li-Cycle basically has a 2-stage process. We've got our spoke facility, which basically is kind of a mechanical size reduction process. what it basically does is it takes the batteries in its full form, doesn't matter of what chemistry it is for the lithium-ion batteries, the state of charge, just anything that, you know, companies don't want, we'll take for a lithium-ion battery. And we reduce the size of it, and we also separate certain materials that are within the battery. So out of that, we basically get three main products. We get plastics. There's actually a lot of plastic in batteries, you'd be surprised. We get foils, so your aluminum and your copper, there's a ton of that as well. Gold and silver if you're dealing with circuit boards. So going back to Jonathan, we do deal with a lot of that type of stuff as well. And then you have black mass, which is basically like this black powdery material that makes up a lot of those crucial, valuable metals that we're trying to refine. And it's like a black powder form. We take that black mass, and that is what we feed into our second stage process, which is a hydrometallurgical process. So wet chemistry process, and in doing that, what we do is taking that black mass, lots of different processes involved in that, but out of that hydrometallurgical process, we're able to produce about 8 to 9 products. And proper products that we can sell, saleable products that we can go to different industries. Predominantly out of that, we've got 3 to 4 of them that are high quality battery grade materials. So things that battery manufacturers use right off the bat. So that's our technology. In terms of what we have currently up and running, we have spoke facilities. So we're working well away at processing these batteries, getting them into those interim products. We have about 10,000 tons, metric tons that we process of batteries at this stage. And then those are essentially going to be feeding into our hub or hydrometallurgical facility, which we're going to have up and running next year in Rochester.
Wow. I can't wait to come see it. Me and Jonathan are already on every trip. So
yeah, it's definitely, it's
Janet
exciting.
too. We're all going to come see you.
Yes, we're coming. We're coming.
Come on over. Yeah.
Janet, tell us a little bit about your process there. I understand that there's refurbishing, but just share with us, is it really laborsome, in what type of, you know, tools or technologies do you use?
Yeah, let's first talk about the whole sorting process, which is a very important thing. When solar panels are shipped into one of our 2 facilities, either on the East Coast or in Arizona, they're first processed and sorted to see if there can be any refurbishable panels out of that. The first sort basically looks at broken glass. Is the solar panel, has it got broken glass? And if it does, it goes into the recycling to be able to be recycled. And keep in mind, the recycling process for solar panels is a process of separating materials, like we said. So just separating materials, you've got the aluminum that has to be separated, and then it's processed. Every part of the ingredients are separated and then have to be processed separately. So then there's the glass that must be processed, and that back sheet has to be pulled out of that. And eventually they can process a little bit of the copper out of there. So that is completely done by our partner recyclers that are professionals and EPA qualified and R2 and all of the ratings. Now let's look at refurbishing. So when the panel comes in to be refurbished, if it's not broken glass, then it will go through stage 2. Many of the solar panels, by looking at them, look fine, right? Bent frames and that kind of thing. So we go on to look for bent frames. We go on to test to see if they have electrical failures in the junction boxes. We test if we can just look, a lot of it we can see by the back sheet. Is the back sheet cracked? Is the back sheet failing? So it goes through our super duper car wash for solar panels, which we've engineered here, which is really kind of cool. And it goes through and it gets washed, and this all washed. And then it goes through another stage, and it goes to get hand detailed, really. So it's hand washed now and shined, and then it goes through so much more as far as labor intensive to determine if it goes into inventory, right? And so
Yeah.
when it goes into inventory, you can only imagine what it has to go through to be able to get into inventory to be able to be sold. There's kind of it. And now when you take in a lot of different brands, you have an inventory nightmare because there's just so many different kinds of solar panels. And okay, who wants to buy 3 of this? Right?
Yeah.
So that's something that keeps getting refined as we go. So, and we're seeing more and more of that company, that installer, that O&M that needs replacement solar panels that are no longer available and no longer made, and calling to find replacement panels. So when we have a large inventory of a lot of different things, right?
I love how you said the solar panel car wash, because I really thought, like, you know, we all think of the car wash and being in there. So it's like this, I love that. So I've had the privilege of actually touring Jonathan's facility, and I'm not just saying that because he's here today, but I've been to a lot of facilities. And when I went to Jonathan's facility, I'm not going to steal too much of your thunder, but I have to say that I had never seen an electronic waste company process the way that you process in down south. And so tell us a little bit about that line that you have. I mean, because I've never seen anything like that before, and I've been to dozens across the United States. So Jonathan, tell us a little bit about what CEWS does with electronic materials and how you process. And then we will jump into Q&A with some of our amazing audience here that I think we have some questions from them. So Jonathan, you're muted. Oh, thank you.
There we go. Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, we have multiple facilities, not only just in Brea. Brea is one of our biggest facilities. We're over 100,000 square feet. That's our end of life facility. That's where everything is being processed as a deconstruction. Corporate e-waste is very unique. We are, let's just say, not just a normal recycler like anybody else, not just an R2 ISO certified recycler. We go beyond that point. We accept plastics. We find solutions for styrofoam. We find solutions for problematic material that landfills can't handle. You can't bury plastic. I mean, there's so many, my passion, let alone I have a great CEO that supports our programs that we are starting, but we want to divert that from the landfills and divert this from businesses that are just throwing everything into the trash. Cardboard, styrofoam, end of life, universal waste, plastics. Not only are we providing security and end of life, we're actually diverting that from going into the landfill.
So Jonathan, is there a lot of labor that's involved with processing there at your 100,000 plus square foot facility?
Correct. We are staffed very large. We do shifts. We used to run a day shift and an evening shift. Obviously, during COVID, we had to adjust accordingly. But yes, it is a constant material coming in, trailer loads of material, but we're not going to stop at what we believe in. We're not going to stop doing what we are doing. We are adjusting as the world is changing.
The day that I was there, their team was, because he shared with me that there's like a schedule, but their team was dismantling CRTs that day. And I've never seen so many CRTs, and I've seen a lot of stuff in my life, like tons and tons, literal tons. And I was like, wow. And I just was so impressed with the way that you and your company did that and the routine that you had, how you guys basically picked one item for that day. And that's what you guys focused on for that day, which I thought was really unique in how you handle that material.
It's like a schedule. No employee likes to do the same thing over and over again every day.
Yeah.
They're going to get bored.
Yeah. See, I knew there was a secret to it. I knew there was a secret to it.
Yes.
So I do believe our chat manager, Serena, may have some questions for us. And
yeah, thanks, Sarah. There's been a few really great questions come through. John Tripp, you had a couple really great ones. Do you want to ask them, or else I can read from the chat and post it?
John, would you like to jump off the mic and ask your question?
Sorry, I actually, it was a while back, so I was trying to scroll back and remember them.
I have them here.
You can go ahead and ask them then, Serena.
Okay. So your first question, it sounds like you were speaking at a startup at a climate tech event last night, and they were talking about economically recovering the materials for lithium batteries, but the cost of mine materials is so low that there's just really no interest in recovery. So I think maybe your question is, how do we build the business case to make sure that it's, okay, great. And I'm assuming Alad, maybe you want to take that one first?
Sorry, would you mind repeating that one for me, Serena?
Sure.
Or John, if you would even.
Yeah, I can repeat it. So I was at a climate tech networking event last night and ended up talking to a startup that's working on economically recovering materials from lithium batteries. They have, I mean, they can essentially recover everything that's in the battery, but there's no interest in it from the battery manufacturers, because the cost of mined materials is less than literally getting the ore, mining it, refining it, et cetera, is less than what is economically recoverable for the cost of recovering the battery.
Right. So I guess the question is kind of the economics of it in particular, or the approach.
It doesn't seem to me that it should be cheaper to mine ore and refine it than it is to reprocess already refined materials. So I'm just curious why that's the case.
Yeah, that's a fair point, John. So I wouldn't be able to speak to the financials at this stage. I know we've done our financial modeling internally for it. I think the reality is, though, for a lot of companies, we're life cycle as well as equivalent to life cycle. What we're in the process of doing right now is basically ramping up for the scenario where, again, non-renewable resource, there's going to be a depletion. There is going to come a point where the financials, it's a lot more economical in order for us to recycle these right off the bat. When it comes to the battery suppliers, again, not something I could comment on if we have, battery suppliers already in place for it, but it's a lot of front end, our realm has expanded outside of just our manufacturers as well for battery grades. So we're partnering up with electric vehicle companies. A lot of them are definitely interested in the circular economy aspect of it. So there's a whole, I would say it's outside of just battery manufacturers themselves. There's a whole realm within this industry that uses this material or something equivalent to it. So I would say, in a nutshell, in the long run, it'll definitely be a lot more of an economical, viable option. But at the same time, it also depends on the kind of products that you are creating as well, right? So if this company is just going and literally extracting certain materials for what they are, in the grand scheme of things, it may be cheaper for them to mine instead, right? It also depends on the kind of products that you're creating as a result. So if you're eliminating some of the steps process-wise for some of these battery grade manufacturers, then the economics start making sense for them. So I know it doesn't answer your question directly because I think there's a lot more to it than simply just having, certain materials and going just to manufacturers to be able to accommodate that saleable product.
John, too, I would say that, and I'm just going to be extremely candid and forthcoming, that we cannot put a price on one's environment, meaning wherever we're mining this material, whether it's cobalt or other materials that we use for solar panels or lithium-ion batteries, the cost is way more. We cannot quantify someone's livelihood, someone's community, and the environment. So the cost to me is a lot more expensive for the manufacturers to continue to mine versus put it back into the circular economy. I don't necessarily think we can put a cost on, but we have put a cost on Mother Nature. We have put costs on the life of maybe some of the places that we are mining for these materials. Do we have any other questions, Sharina, from the audience?
Yeah, Sarah, just kind of staying on the financial topic. Anne Hendry had a really great question. Anne, I don't know if you want to ask, otherwise I can.
Who?
Anne Hendry.
Anne, would you like to get off the mic and ask the question to the panelists?
Hi, sure, yeah, and it kind of follows on to what's been discussed. And I apologize, but my connection wonky. So if you can't hear anything I say, I'll just let me know. I'll try and repeat it.
We can hear you.
The question was about, so companies are really not driven by goodwill yet. And touchy-feely, you know, I'm doing something good for the environment. They're driven by basic financials. So Sarah, early on you asked, what is the financial benefit of recycling versus not recycling? And I think until that is quantified, it will be hard to convince companies that they're doing, that they need to do this. So the incentives can come from either government or, you know, the population in various ways, like, you know, maybe boycotting companies that don't recycle. But I think in the end, we really need to see a concrete financial benefit in order for companies to really pick this up and run with it. And so we were just talking about the cost benefit of getting new materials out of the earth versus recycling them by taking apart existing material, you know, equipment. So I have a background in architecture, and I compare that question to the question of, is it cheaper to build a new house or to remodel, completely remodel an existing house? There's really no question there. It's cheaper to build a new house, because once you start to get into the guts of what's something is already, that's been done and sold and used, you have to consider what condition it's in, what the remaining life value is, and then you have to really diligently test to make sure that there are no issues with what you're trying to recycle, like little hairline cracks, or, you know, maybe there was some other material that you didn't, that isn't made discrete in those products. So it's a lot more work to recycle than it is just to start fresh. That's my opinion anyway.
Thank you. Serena, I think we have time for one more question from the audience. Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, Julie Bush messaged me, so really I'll just read it. What is the status of legislation around new products manufacturing to build products that are designed for a circular economy? What specific bills or legislation can we support in front of our state that federal legislation? If any.
Can you repeat that question one more time?
Is it hard to hear me? Or?
Yeah, it's a little hard to hear you.
I'll just post the question in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Can I respond?
Real quick on Anne's response, I'd love to. She's correct. What is the incentive to recycle? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
What is the incentive, Anne, to recycle? I get that. I deal with companies, let alone like Sarah. We want to come in and show you the difference between a cost and recycling. What we can do to benefit by recycling is taking some of those old retired devices. There might be a possible value return. There might be an asset deposition, meaning there might be a recovery that we can process. It's our job to analyze what we can do to benefit an income revenue back. So the best way for a company to do that is to reach out to us. We can understand your guys' current process and give you back a plan that makes sense. It's not everything should go into the trash. I mean, you possibly might have value recovery, meaning in that process that we can evaluate and come back as an income revenue. I love doing those programs. I specialize in that. That's a quick briefing real quick. Thank you, Anne, for that. It was great. I'd love to connect.
And can I speak to that one as well, and to the legislation?
Sure.
I think that that question is important. How is it quantified? Well, one of the ways that it is actually quantified, and the larger companies are recognizing that their ESG standing matters. They don't want to have their customers know that they've just put 20, 30,000 panels in the landfill. It is a part of their marketing. Until more of that legislation piece comes in, that will maybe manufacturers will have to contribute to the future recycling of their panels. Maybe there'll be landfill bans when that, you know, then at some point it's a budgetary necessity. That's like the way that they would budget for any other cost of doing business, right? Then it would become a budgetary necessity. So there's that part, and that's why building awareness, just like we're here today, building awareness from Grand Roots to just to you know, be aware of what companies, and a lot of them they are recycling, they are doing the right thing. They have whole environmental staffs and teams that want to know that everything is happening the right way so they don't get in trouble down the road. But what, you know, refurbishing does help that cost. It totally helps that cost. Just like Jonathan was saying, we can build, everything is different, and I want to look at how is the best way we can make this happen for you.
Well, I definitely think that there's going to be a time where, similar to what we call California redemption value and electronics and tires, because every time you buy these types of equipments, we pay an upfront deposit. So when you buy an electronic, you're paying a deposit to recycle something at the back end. When you buy a tire, you're paying a deposit to recycle it on the back end. When we buy a plastic bottle, we're paying a deposit to recycle it on the back end. So I would presume that that would be the case with some of these materials. And if not, I do think it's something that we should impress upon our local governments and people that are in these positions to advocate and lobby for us. In closing, I would first and foremost, I really enjoyed our conversation. I didn't get through all my 2 pages of questions. So please, audience, if you have any further questions, feel free to connect with everybody on LinkedIn. I shared my profile in there. Please connect with all of our panelists on LinkedIn. We will share the chat after this call today. Just a friendly reminder, we do have these upcoming events on March 24th and April 7th and 28th. And I just want to thank all of our volunteers, Glenna, Sapna, Annalise, Caroline, Serena, and Kirpa. And please follow us on the virtual world. This recording will be shared with everybody that attended today. So you will get to revisit it and maybe ask more questions to our panelists another time. And in closing, I just want to say that every one of these panelists today is actively contributing to their community, not just by doing the right thing, by bringing awareness, coming up with solutions for what we call hard to recycle items. Because these items that we talked about today are hard to recycle, and it's very laborsome and requires technology to do so. But know that outside of that, their hard everyday work, they're also contributing to the community that they live in and our environment. And with that being said, it's priceless to me. So I don't mean to get emotional, but it makes me emotional because it's something that, as I mentioned, as we started this call, we're all extremely passionate about what we do. And I'm pretty sure all of us really love going to work every day, you know, so it was just a great conversation. Thank you, Ola. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Jonathan, for being with us today. And it was a great pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Come off the mic and say bye and have a great day today.